All right.
Good.
Yes, sir. All right. So first, what was your experience with American Legion baseball?
Well, my daddy was a member of the Legion when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right along then. And we used to go to games. And in 1963, the first game of the season, he drove some of the players to the first game. And, of course, the way they did it back then is wherever they were going to play a game, 4 or 5 Legionnaires would drive. If they had 15 or 16 players, if the average, the cars back then would hold 5 people. Mm-hmm. Because you could have the driver. There was a hump in the older model cars in the front seat, and then this person sat on the other side. In back seat, you could have 3. So at least 3, 4, 5 Legionnaires helped carry the team to every game. And my dad, in 1963, the first game was in Benson, and we went to the game. And when we got to Benson, they told us to go to the high school and change clothes and then come to the ballpark, take bad practice and all that stuff. And I was standing there, and Albert walks up to me, and he says, "Do you want to drag the bats?" And I looked at him like, "What are you talking about? Drag the bats?" And he says, "Be the bat boy." And I said, "Yes." So starting with that first game in 1963, I was the bat boy for 63, 64, and 65, which would have been my 10, 11, and 12-year-old years.
Wow.
All right. Did you continue to play past any experience you had with American Legion?
Did you play American Legion?
Yes, I played at Ahoskie High School, but I never played Legion.
Okay. Who did you know from our area that went on to play college or professional baseball?
Well, we didn't have very many players from Ahoskie that went to play baseball. Most of the guys I know came through American Legion that I learned of sometimes being other players that I knew that were on the other teams. Certainly, there were several on the 1963 team that went and played college baseball and even college football. And, of course, Jimmy Hunter didn't play any college sports because he went pro right out of high school. But 2 of his teammates, Freddie and Francis Combs, at the time, when Jimmy signed at the end of the 64 season to go pro, Freddie and Francis came back to Ahoskie and played American Legion baseball, which was their senior baseball season. And they went the next year. Freddie played football. Well, Freddie and Francis both had scholarships to play football and baseball at NC State. And also on that team, the first baseman went to East Carolina, played baseball. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I can't even think of the first baseman's name right at this moment.
Was it a Bobby Hale? Bobby
Hall.
Hall. Okay.
Bobby Hall was, at the time, 63, was a sophomore, and he played first base and right field. And he went to NC State and played football and made all-conference wingback at NC State. He was from Plymouth. So Freddie and Francis were from Windfall, but they went to Hertford County High School. And Bobby Hall went to Plymouth High School and played Legion ball in Ahoskie. And you had to play Legion in Ahoskie because at the time there wasn't anything called travel league of any kind of sport. When your little town got through with Little League, there was nothing else. There wasn't any travel of anything. So if you were any good, the only place you could go is you could go to Greenville and play Legion ball. You could go to Rocky Mount and play Legion ball. And then sometimes you could go to Roanoke Rapids and play Legion ball. But in 63, Roanoke Rapids didn't even have a Legion team. And So if you were any good, you came to Ahoskie to play ball in northeastern North Carolina.
Wow.
You done asked me a question, and now I done.
We took you off track, didn't we?
Yes.
Well, let's go there.
Go ahead.
All right.
A lot of times I can think of an answer to something in the middle of another question.
I got you.
Do you have a particular memory of playing, watching, or coaching American Legion baseball?
Tony, specifically that little story you told me about holding the Dixie Cup. I think that would be kind of neat.
Well, that was at the last. I believe it was the last road game of 1963. I was riding with Carlton Cherry, who was a lawyer in Ahoskie. He was a member of the Legion. I was sitting in the hump on the front seat because at 10 years old I could ride the hump and could still take 4 players. And, of course, since I was going to every game, a lot of times if you were the bat boy, you only showed up for the home games, but I went to the away games too. And I was on the hump, and Jimmy Hunter sat to my right. Freddie Combs was in the back seat to the behind Jimmy. Francis Combs was in the middle, and Gene Nixon, who was a third baseman from Hertford, was behind the driver's seat. And you were just talking as you're riding, and you hear all kinds of stories from the players, what goes on in their life. And Mr. Cherry was a tobacco chewer, and he carried a Dixie cup, and the kind of size cup that you used to find in the bathrooms, little cups that maybe only held an ounce of water that you would wash your mouth out when you brush your teeth. And he would carry a Dixie cup with him, and every time he needed to spit, I'm holding the cup. So I ride the whole way to Benson holding the Dixie cup, and as the conversation gets going, Mr. Cherry asked Jimmy about what he thought his future was going to be, about whether he wanted to play pro ball if it came to pass. And as the discussion went on, Mr. Cherry told Jimmy Hunter, he says, if you need any help with a contract, I'll be glad to help you. So that was the first time of any discussion that I know anything about him helping Jimmy Hunter. Well, at the end of the season in 1963, we had just about the whole team coming back next year after the season was over, which would be for Jimmy Hunter his senior year. But Hertford played for the state championship in 64 and got beat 2-1 after we had already started the season. And they had already started the season in 63 when we won the championship. And when the season got over, he went home, and the owner of the Kansas City Athletics followed him home and signed him to a contract before he could come play Legion ball. So he did not come back that year, and that changed the whole complexion of Legion ball in 64 because we lost the best pitcher in North Carolina that wasn't going to be there.
Wow.
In fact, my daddy went to the day that they scheduled what conference you were going to be in, everything. One of the things known, the Raleigh Legion would not be in our league that year because Jimmy Hunter was going to be back. So we didn't play Raleigh like we did some years. In fact, we played Raleigh in 65, but they wouldn't be in our league because Jimmy Hunter was going to be in them and keep them from winning it.
Wow.
So we didn't. We were only a 500 team that year when Jimmy didn't come back. Now, here's the thing about 1963. Jimmy Hunter probably pitched about 40% of all the innings that year. And there was a story in the News Herald, I think it was the very first game. Once they won the state championship in 63, they came and we were playing like the third game of the season. We'd already won one and lost one when they got there after the state championship. And Jimmy had just pitched the state championship game like on a Saturday, and this might have been a Tuesday. And he says, I'm not going to pitch him today. I'm going to give him the day off. But Freddie and Francis were playing shortstop and second base. Francis was a second baseman until Jimmy Hunter pitched, and he caught every game that Jimmy Hunter pitched in high school. So when Jimmy pitched, Francis played catcher, and he played second base when he didn't pitch. And we played the third game of the season, and we were down 4-0 in the first inning. And Albert put Jimmy in the game. And this is in the first inning now. Jimmy struck out 21 batters in the first game.
Wow.
And you only got 27 outs to make. And I don't know if there was 1 out or 2 outs already time he got in the game. But it was in the Herald. There's a picture of Francis Combe with a towel waving it, cooling Jimmy off because he was so hot from striking out 21 batters.
Wow.
That was in the Herald in 1963.
Great.
That is one of the many stories of how good Jimmy Hunter was.
We're going to lead into a few specific Jimmy questions.
All right, okay.
All right. Who were some of Jimmy's closest friends growing up, and how was he able to keep in touch with them and home after going pro?
Well, I think his best friend in life was Francis Combs. Francis, here's a story about him signing a scholarship to play football at NC State. Jimmy goes off and spends 1964 at Charles Finley's home in Chicago, Illinois, or somewhere around Illinois, because when Jimmy was a rising senior at Christmas time of his senior year, the year after 63's Legion's team, him and his brother Pete were out hunting, deer hunting or something at Christmas time, and they were crossing a fence. And one of them laid a shotgun down on the fence, and as they were getting under the fence, the shotgun falls and shoots Jimmy in his foot. Shoots his big toe off and has more than 50 pellets in his foot.
Wow.
He goes to Norfolk General Hospital, and they took a bunch of the pellets out and repaired his foot. And, when everybody hears that Jimmy Hunter has been in an accident, his career is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, baseball season comes up, and Jimmy Hunter is pitching with his foot wrapped up.
Wow.
He has no top on his shoe, but they got tape on it to hold his shoe on. I don't remember what part of the season it was, but because we had won the Legion Conference Championship the year before, when Hertford came to play Ahoskie in their conference game that year, a lot of people showed up because Jimmy Hunter, who's now a Ahoskie native, he won a championship for us last year. He's pitching tonight.
Wow.
He pitched a no-hitter against Ahoskie with no shoe, his foot all taped up.
Wow.
So the place goes crazy for him.
Yeah.
And when the season finally comes over, they sign him to a contract and they send him to Rochester, Minnesota, to the hospital up there, that famous hospital in Rochester. And they did some more work on his foot. So he spent the whole summer of 64 at Charles Finley's house recovering from his surgeries and stuff. So he doesn't play any baseball at all in 64. In 65, he goes down to spring training and makes the team.
Wow.
And never goes to the pros, and he goes to the minors. He goes right straight
To the major.
to the big club.
Wow.
Big club.
Wow.
And won 8 games his first year on a team that was terrible. They were the worst team in baseball.
Wow.
So Freddie, I get back to my story where I was heading with Francis, who I think was probably his best friend growing up through life. goes to see them, I believe it was Baltimore, on a weekend, actually went and stayed some time with Jimmy in Illinois and traveled with the teams to a couple of places. And that was a NCAA recruiting violation, because as a scholarship player, you can't get nothing for free back then.
Wow.
And he had to sit out his freshman year of football because he went on a trip with Jimmy Hunter in the major leagues.
Wow.
For free. So Francis never played football after that, but Freddie did. And of course, after at that time you played freshman football, not on the varsity, but on the second year as a sophomore in college, Francis left on a Friday morning. NC State was playing Michigan State and East Lansing, Michigan, and Francis hitchhiked to East Lansing, Michigan.
Wow.
When he walks up to the stadium, the radio crew and the football team is just arriving at the game, and he has no ticket to get in. So the radio team says, "Why don't you come and help spot for us in the game today?" That was 1967, 66 or 67. And he's been doing that every game since. He's only missed 2 or 3 games since then in the booth at NC State football games.
Wow.
Now, Freddie and Francis went on as seniors and played in the College World Series for NC State.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Moving on to the next question.
All right, go ahead.
How was Jimmy as a person outside of baseball and as a player?
Jimmy Hunter was a country boy. If you were his friend, I saw Jimmy many times after he retired, or even during the off season when he was home, and he's just a friendly old guy. You couldn't ask for anybody to be more humble than he was. You would never know. I worked one day and stopped at a service station, which was famous for hot dogs and stuff, for lunch one day. And Jimmy was driving up in his pickup truck. He was coming to have a hot dog. And I walked over and started talking to him. One of the things that I had to do, the older I got, I was 10 years old at the time. They were 16, 17 years old. So by the time I got 20, I didn't look the same I did at 10. I would always, the first time I'd see him in a while, I would introduce myself again, And I walked over and introduced myself and told him who I was, and we went and ate hot dog together in the old Union 76 service station in Windfall, North Carolina.
Him and the Bat Boy.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy Hunter and the Bat Boy. That's right. He was an old country boy. Everybody was his friend. If you go to Hertford right now and ask about Catfish Hunter, nobody knows who Catfish Hunter is. He was Jimmy.
That's right.
He's Jimmy to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
What was one of the moments that set Catfish apart from other players?
If you look at his batting record in the Major League Baseball, he's one of the few pitchers in a time that pitchers could hit over 200 in the major leagues. And this is playing once every 4 days.
Wow.
He was a good hitter. I can remember he hit a home run in Ahoskie. Now, you may want to ride by there and look at it. The field is still there, but where the old Ahoskie graded school used to be the ball field.
Mm-hmm.
The high school field was down on the park side of the area, the play area, and down at the other end was the Little League field. So it's no fence. It's wide open. You could hit one on the schoolhouse or you could miss the schoolhouse and the ball roll forever. Jimmy Hunter hit a home run one night that went to dead center field and rolled all the way to Highway 561.
Wow.
That's probably, after all the rolling and everything, probably 600 feet.
Wow.
But, I mean, it was a line drive, and it was taking off. And toward the other end of the old school was a driver range where parents would drop the kids off in a kind of hard, rocky area. So when the ball hit that area, it kind of bounced like on cement and kept right on going. But he was a good hitter as well as a pitcher.
All right.
And he got some many hits for Legion ball. I tell you, he got some big hits.
Nice.
Since Jimmy also played other sports, what sport did he excel in other than baseball?
He was a tight end in football and a linebacker on football. And Hertford won the state championship in 62 and 63. Freddie was the quarterback, and Francis was the quarterback, and Freddie was the halfback. Freddie was one of the fastest guys in North Carolina.
Wow.
We played back when I grew up, Ahoskie was really good in football. So was Edenton, Williamston, and Plymouth. And Hertford won 2 state championships. There was a period of time from like 1946 to 1971 that our conference won 22 out of 25 state championships. So my daddy's cried on Friday night. We would go see Ahoskie play, and when the season got over, who was the champion of the conference, we followed them and went to their games. And in 1960, might have been the 62 season or the 63 season, I'm not sure which one. Hertford or Paquemmons played Havelock in Finklin Stadium in Greenville. It wasn't the stadium it is now, but it had that big home bleacher on one side and a college bleacher on the other. And I remember Freddie took a handoff and went around the end, and the guy was ready to tackle him at about the line of scrimmage, and he jumped right over top of the guy, and ain't nobody else in the place been close to catching.
All right. Did Jimmy want to pursue a career other than baseball? And if so, what did he want to do?
I can't tell you that. I don't know.
All right.
Baseball's all I can tell you about.
That's good.
And let's briefly talk about the deal on Main Street. So he was the first to tell me, in your words, wasn't it?
74 when he signed the contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, in 1974, and during the off season of 73-74, Jimmy signed another contract for the now the Oakland A's, but it's still owned by Charles Bentley, who owns the team. In that contract, he was supposed to get a certain amount of money, like $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and then get an annuity. Jimmy wanted to buy farmland around his home. In fact, if you've ever been where his place is, it's all, it's wide open fields all around where he lives at when he was growing up, and he wanted to buy farmland. And he got it to sign an annuity, and when it come time to pay the taxes on it, Finley found out he had to pay the taxes. Jimmy didn't have to pay the taxes. And, of course, Mr. Cherry had negotiated this, and he'd signed it. But once Finley found out he had to pay taxes on it, he quit paying on it. So Jimmy was losing $25,000 a year annuity because he won't pay it on it. So at the end of the season in 1974, they went to court and asked that Finley start paying the annuity again because that was part of his contract. So they went to court in New York City and sometime around October of 74 and had a hearing, and 3 arbitrators were assigned to decide the arbitration. And they had a meeting in middle of November, and one arbitrator voted that Finley didn't have to pay it, and one arbitrator voted that he did have to pay it, and the third arbitrator asked for a couple of weeks to think about it some more. And like the 13th of December or somewhere along in there, the arbitrator comes back and says he owes the money to Jimmy. But because he didn't follow the contract is voided. He has no contract. So when Carlton Cherry and Jimmy walked out of the courthouse, they thought they had lost because he ain't playing with nobody. Mm-hmm. And when Carlton Cherry gets back to his office, teams are calling all over the place. I want to sign him. I want to sign him. So he set it up that the week before Christmas of 1974 and the week after Christmas of 1974, if you want to talk to us, you're coming to my law office in Ahoskie, North Carolina, and you got 3 hours to make your pitch. So 22 of the 24 teams at that time sent somebody to come to Ahoskie.
Wow.
The only team that didn't come was Finley, and he called on the phone and tried to make a verbal presentation. And the San Francisco Giants, they did not come. Every other team sent a representative, including the California Angels, who the owner of the Angels was Gene Autry, and Gene Autry came to Ahoskie bearing his Here Comes Santa Claus record that he made famous.
Wow. Wow.
George Steinbrenner at the time owned the Yankees, but he had been put on probation and out of baseball for a year, so they had to send the president of the Yankees came. Ray Kroc, who owns McDonald's, who owned the San Diego Padres, came to Ahoskie. And they each all made a 3-hour presentation, or however how long it took them, but 3 hours was the maximum they had to make their presentation. And finally, on December 31st, Jimmy signed with the Yankees.
Wow.
San Diego had made an offer of $4.5 million for 5 years, $900,000 a year, and the Yankees made a $3.2 million and some kind of cash bonus or something. But he was a Yankee fan growing up. In the 1950s and 60s, baseball was not on TV at night. You could only hear it on radio, but most all baseball games in the early 60s were played still in the afternoon. There weren't that many nighttime games. So the local station in this area that carried the Yankees was WRVA in Richmond, Virginia. And it boomed right into eastern North Carolina. And you could hear the Yankees at 2 o'clock when they came on every summer afternoon. And he was a Yankees fan. And he always wanted to play for the Yankees, and he signed with the Yankees.
Wow.
This is the last question we have for you here.
All right.
What should people remember about him, and what do you think he would want to be known for?
Well,
in your opinion,
in 1979, I went on a trip to London and Paris with the French teacher at Ahoskie. My wife at that time was a teacher, and they were looking for people to be chaperones. So we're going to London and Paris. And when we came back from London, we stopped at LaGuardia Airport waiting for the flight back home. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and the Yankees had played that day at Yankee Stadium. And I look up, and here comes Jimmy Hunter and his wife, Helen Hunter. She's flying back to North Carolina. She'd been there with him. Now she's going back home for, I don't know for how long, but she was going home. She's going to be on the same flight that we're on. And I walked up to Jimmy, and there's like 23 people from eastern North Carolina that went on that trip. And I went up to Jimmy, and Jimmy was eating at the time. And I said, Jimmy, after you get through eating, will you come over here and see these people and maybe sign some autographs for them? They're all from Eastern North Carolina. The trip consisted of students from Gates County High School and Ahoskie High School, and all the people that, maybe 30, 35 people altogether. As soon as he got through eating, he came over there and spent most of the time waiting for the flight to leave, talking to those folks.
Wow. Wow.
All right.
That's what I remember about Jimmy
Yeah,
Hunter.
just a good guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I take it that was Miss Martin's French class.
Miss Martin's French class. Absolutely right. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, we really do appreciate
I
it.
believe probably Albert can probably help you as much as any. I think pretty much my first cousin, Bobby Doughtie, was a really good third baseman. And he played Legion ball for a couple of years in 66 and 67. And in 1967, Albert was the coach. And Bobby made All-State American Legion. He was a third baseman and he hit close to 400. And he made All-State American Legion. That's about all I know about. I don't remember nothing before 63, hardly any.
Gotcha.
And Legion stopped in like 1969. So I think Albert can probably, if there's any future from the 1950s, he can probably tell you something about that if there was a Legion team. I don't even know if it was or not, up till early 60 or whatever, or 58, 59, when I started kind of going to games once in a while.
Right.
So I think he would probably be the next one I'd try to get in touch with.
Oh, that's perfect.
All right.
All right. Well, you've been so helpful, Tony.